All right. Good evening, everyone. All right. So it is 7 o'clock, and I'd like to start on time. So welcome, and glad that you are here for the webinar. My name is Dr. Nathalie Beauchamp, and tonight we're going to talk about how healthy is your gut. So my goal for tonight is really to help you understand your digestion, your digestive system, and also give you tools. I'd like, by the time we're done, that you have some new tools and solution to help you. So this is what we're going to focus on. And as well, feel free, guys, to in the chat at the top right, feel free to send me questions as we go. If they are relevant and pertinent to what I'm talking about at the time that you ask, I will try to answer them, or we can leave that for the end as well. So let's get started, because I have tons of stuff, and hopefully you'll get a lot of value out of it. And you'll also get the recording of this, so if you have to leave a little bit earlier. But that being said, at the end, I'm going to give you a little gift. So yes, I'm bribing you to stay, for you to stay on the whole time. Again, solutions that I think will be helpful for you when it comes to finding ways to have a better digestion. So let's start with a cartoon. For some of you that know me well, you know I love humor, and I like this cartoon because, you know, it's looks a little bit silly that they keep mopping and the tap is still on. But oftentimes when it comes to health, you know, we kind of put a band-aid on something, and we don't necessarily go to the source of the problem. And the analogy here is, obviously, if it's coming from somewhere else, you need to address that issue. So obviously the solution to this is to go to the source of the problem. It's also all about balance. Balance in all the system when it comes to the body and diseases and so forth. So when it comes to the gut, we're going to dig fairly deep in this, but basically we have to look at the assimilation of our food, the defense and repair. We're going to talk about the immune system. We're also going to talk about the energy system, because we eat and we consume food to have the energy from it. And when that communication is not happening properly, it doesn't work efficiently. And that's another component, is the communication. We're going to talk about neurotransmitter. We're also going to talk about the transformation and the elimination. So we're going to talk about toxicity and detoxification as well. The transport, we can't forget that, the cardiovascular system and the lymphatic system. And lastly, the integrity of our structure. So we're talking at a cellular level and a musculoskeletal level. So I'm going to try to simplify things as best as we can. So let's get started. So first of all, what do we need to thrive? Well, you know, pretty basic stuff, and food being one of them, but we also need vitamin and mineral. We need light, water, and air. We also need movement, and we also need love and connection and meaning to our life. So we're going to focus obviously on the gut tonight, but I think you'll get the sense on how everything is affecting our life when it comes to our health. And what do we need to get rid of? And I love this picture of a garbage bag, because our approach to health oftentimes is you know, twofold: what we need to add and what we need to get rid of. And what I'm talking about here are toxins, it's allergens, things in our food, microbes, and we're going to go in detail with that. And then stress. I did a presentation on adrenal stress and adrenal hormones, and we can't, again, look at one system and not think of all of the system being connected together. And then obviously poor diet. I know it sounds a little bit cliche that, you know, you are what you eat, but I'm not kidding. This is truly, you know, truthful when it comes to our digestive system and everything. So why should we focus on the gut? Well, I'm going to send a few statistics your way here. The gut actually produces 3/4 of the body neurotransmitter. And what neurotransmitter are, they're basically the chemical messenger. It also contains 2/3 plus of the immune tissues. So when people find themselves being sick all the time, we need to look at the gut. It also contains 10 times more cell than the rest of the body combined. That's insane. It houses a genome of 100 times larger than the human genomes. I'm going to tell you in a few seconds with other picture as well, but we really are outnumbered by you know, the bacteria and the microorganism in our body. It has an even greater metabolic activity than the liver. So this is why we need to focus on the gut. So in terms of area of contact with the outside world, just to put things in perspective, the skin surface area is 1.5 square meter. The lungs or the respiratory mucosa area is 100 square per meter, and the GI mucosa is 300 square per meter. So it's a huge surface in contact with the world, and that's why it's so important. And here I briefly mentioned it, that you guys may or may not know this, is that our human genome has been said to be around 23,000 genes, and the human microbiome is 1 million plus genes. So your body, as I said, has 10 times as many microbe cells as human cells. So we are born 99% human and we die 90% microbial. So it's, you know, it's affecting us throughout our life, and we have to be in a good relationship, in a symbiotic relationship with those bugs for them to do what needs to be done. So we're not all bad. Little bug here. We do need these guys to do what they're supposed to do. So we have to be, like I said, in a good relationship with them. Another big thing too is a lot of people will blame their issues on their genetics, and it is very, you know, and genes are very important, but we cannot underestimate the power of the environment to create what we call the phenotype, which is the characteristic of an individual resulting from the interaction of its genotype with the environment. And I love this quote here. Genetics load the gun and lifestyle pulls the trigger. And this is a quote that I first heard at the Institute of Functional Medicine doing my courses. And I'm like, wow, this is such a powerful quote, because one may have certain genes that are, affecting their body in certain ways. But if our lifestyle is really good, we can really have a big impact on that. So how does it work? I thought I would start with anatomy or physiology 101 to go over what's happening with the digestive system. I'm not going to go into much details, but I think it's important that you guys understand when you eat something, and by the time it comes out, what did it do? Where did it go? And how did your body process it? So I'm going to try to simplify it as best as I can, and not to go into much detail. So here's a nice graphic here, and I think everybody can relate to the fact that it starts with the mouth, and then we have enzymes through saliva that are going to help us with our tongue and the movement of the jaw to break down the food and kind of put it in a mushy kind of thing for the body to digest. It's going to go through the esophagus, and then it's going to hit the stomach, and it's going to hit the stomach acid. And it is important that there is acid in the stomach. We'll talk about that because it helps digest the food even further. So it receives the food from the stomach, and the digestive enzyme such as bile, which breaks down the fat, and the pancreatic juices, which break down the protein and the carbohydrate respectively. So the pancreas, which you see on the extreme right of the picture, we think of the pancreas, we often think of people that are diabetic and controlling sugar and all that, but the pancreas is responsible for the production of digestive enzymes that are really, really, really important. And the liver, as I said, will secrete the bile, which will help break down those fat. And then it's going to hit the small intestine, and then it's going to go and get assimilated, and then it's going to go into the larger intestine, and it's going to exit throughout the anus, and this is what we call the bowel movement. So complex, and there are many organs involved, and what happened is that if any of those don't do what they're supposed to do, this is when things can possibly go wrong. So we're going to dig a little bit deeper into the digestion and absorption. Then we're going to talk about intestinal permeability. We're going to talk about the microbiota and imbalances, and we're going to talk about inflammation and immune system, and then the nervous system. So let's start digging a little bit deeper. So as I said, what could go wrong? If we start at the top, we can have issues with the mastication. And again, sounds a bit cliche to chew your food, but it's basic 101 advice here that the more time we take to chew, the more time the enzymes have to break down the food that we're eating. And then it goes to the stomach. So if the acid in the stomach is too low, which is often the case, and we'll talk about that, the food won't get broken down. Same thing with the bile producing, produced from the liver, the digestive enzyme from the pancreas. There's also digestive enzyme in the small intestine. And then brush border injury is basically the lumen of the gut itself. So first of all, mastication, as I said, very important to digest our food. And then second of all, the stomach acid, also called HCl. And what's the function of the HCl? It's literally the conversion, breaking down of the protein through the pepsin. So it helps for that digestion. It also breaks down unwanted microbes. So it really is the first line of defense if we eat something that has microbes on it. The stomach acid increases the absorption of minerals like calcium, iron, and also to a lesser extent, zinc, magnesium, and copper as well. So you can see that, the function of the acid in the stomach is very important. So what are the signs and symptoms of hypochlorhydria? And because a lot of you are probably on this webinar because you might be having issues when you eat, you feel really bloated, either right after or a couple hours, you know that your digestive system is not doing what it's supposed to do. So like I said earlier, my goal is for us to go and figure those things out so you can figure out what part of your digestive system is not working well, and then finding natural solution for that. So what are the signs and symptoms of not enough stomach acid? Bloating and belching right after the meal. So not 2 hours after, but right after. And a big sense of fullness after eating. You feel like your food is sitting in your stomach. There's could be even undigested food in the stool. Some itching around the rectum, weak peeling and cracking of nails, fingernails, and again, because the absorption of certain mineral is not there. Iron deficiency is a big one. So if you're getting blood tests and your tests are always coming back that you're deficient in iron, really look into that. Chronic intestinal infection, multiple food allergies, flatulence with bloating as well. So again, the consequences: B12 deficiency, dysbiosis, chronic candida infection. Oftentimes those microbes are gonna go wild and colonate areas that they're not supposed to. Mineral deficiency, as I mentioned, and then small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, also called Sibo, which I'll leave to this for now, but it's basically growth of intestinal bacteria in the wrong area. And towards the end of the presentation, I'll dig deeper into this because it is the solution to a lot of people who have problems of irritable, that have been diagnosed as irritable bowel syndrome. So hypochlorhydria, what causes it? Aging can be one of the reason. Fasting or very low calorie diet, stress, viral or bacterial infection, H. pylori being one of them. PPI, which are proton pump inhibitors. So they're the drugs that are given when people have heartburn. and H2 blockers as well, which are not being given as much as the PPIs now. And then antacid abuse. I have sometimes patients that tell me they live on antacids and are popping them up like, it's going out of style. So as you can see with the first one, aging being a big factor, as we get older, our body produces less acid. And funny enough, and it sounds a little bit counterproductive, that we give pills that will help decrease the stomach acid, and oftentimes it's because there's not enough acid. We're going to talk about GERD or reflux in a second, but oftentimes, and I'll tell you about a test to do on this, we can help the person with those symptoms just by some solution to increase the stomach acid. So we're starting the digestion correctly from the get-go. Proton pump inhibitor, as I mentioned, any drugs is not without its side effects, and unfortunately we can have with the antacid drug an increased risk in infection, malabsorption of the calcium, magnesium, iron, and B12, which are, it's pretty serious stuff. Low stomach acid that will even cause you heartburn, indigestion, and bloating. So you're giving something, but you end up with similar symptoms. And a big one as well is osteoporosis, because the absorption is not happening properly. Here's a list of disease that can be associated with low HCl. So we really need to take this seriously. This is not just feeling uncomfortable and, feeling a bit bloated after you eat. This is the first step into your digestive system. So if it's not happening properly, you will have some issues. So how do we test? I just love that picture. So all through, I'm going to give you some things that you can do to test. So one of the tests that you can do is called the betaine HCl challenge. So basically, betaine HCl are natural supplement that you can get. And basically, the test is to eat a high protein meal of at least 6 ounces of meat. And in the middle of your meal, you're going to take a tablet. So 2 things, and you finish your meal. So 2 things will happen or could happen. The first one is you go about your day and you don't see anything at all. No change. You're not feeling bad or worse. So when that's the case, it often means that you're most likely low in acid. Second thing that can happen is you're gonna start feeling a little bit nauseous and you won't feel so good. So what it means is that your stomach acid is most likely okay, and by taking that, now you're not feeling good. So it's something that you can get at most health food store. I know we carry it at the clinic, and it's one of the cheapest way to test your HCl and the level of it, to see if that's what's giving you grief when it comes to your digestion. I would say try it for a few days, but I think people that have that issue will see definitely a good response right away. So betaine HCl as support, then you can keep taking that as well. There's digestive enzyme, other things like apple cider vinegar can be very useful as well. And again, it's cheap. You can buy it organic. You dilute it in a little bit of water, and then you take that before you eat or while you eat. Obviously, this decreasing stress, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that with the nervous system. Chiropractic care can be also very helpful. I'll cover that in a little bit, towards the end of the presentation, and acupuncture as well. All of it because it helps the function, and it helps to make sure that everything is going accordingly. Reflux GERD is gastroesophageal reflux disease. I apologize for my pronunciation. That's why I'm going to call it GERD. This is a physiological event, meaning that it's not just one thing. So it gets to be complex because, there's impairment in the salivary function, the gastric emptying is slower, there's might be issues with a hernia as well. So it's a little bit more complex, actually quite a bit more complex than just a lower level of acid in your stomach. And again, some of the solutions that I'm giving you with the betaine and all the other supplements that I've listed can also be helpful for that and not to get to that level. So diet and lifestyle modification for GERD, avoiding wine, chocolate, citrus fruits, tomatoes, peppermint actually, because usually peppermint is good for digestion, but not with people that have GERD. Actually will make it worse. Onion, garlic, high-fat meals and carbonation. Eating smaller meal, weight loss, because oftentimes people will have that reflux because they are unfortunately overweight. Smoking cessation, elevation of the head of the bed, sleeping on the left side, and not eating at least 3 hours before you go to bed. Other alternative therapies, low-carb diet, melatonin supplement actually have been shown to be helpful. Iperogas, if you Google that, you'll see it's a supplement that contains 9 herbal medicine that are helpful for digestion. Licorice root extract, slippery elm, aloe vera can be good as well. Again, diluted a little bit in water if you have a hard time drinking it. Zinc, L-carnosine, GABA, and again, acupuncture, chiropractic care, osteopathic care as well, because there are some visceral manipulation that can be done as well. So as you can see, stomach, very important and counterintuitive to think that we've got too much acid because we're getting kind of a heartburn, but do the betaine test and see how you feel. And I'm always pleasantly surprised of how many times just that will solve a lot of issues for some people. So the next organ we're going to go to is the pancreas. And like I said, the pancreas role is really the breakdown of the fat with the lipase, the breakdown of the protein with the protease, the breakdown of the carbs with the enzyme amylase. So again, without going into too much detail, but here are some of the symptoms. So indigestion and fullness 2 to 4 hours after the meal. So not like, the HCl issue that we had where it was right away sitting in your stomach. This one will be more 2 to 4 hours. Undigested food in the stool, fatty stool, glucose intolerance, again, can lead to malnutrition and vitamin deficiency. Slow transit time, diarrhea as well is a big one, and being fatigued as well. Here's a list again of diseases that can be associated with these 3 enzymes or a deficiency in these 3 enzymes. So again, it's not just your body not digesting properly. It's not just you feeling bloated and feeling gassy. These are the consequences that chronically not absorbing your food properly can lead to. Why does this happen? Stress, toxicity, imbalances in pH, damage to the microvilli, and we're going to talk about that in the gut permeability. Alcohol abuse can be another one as well, and oxidative stress as well. There are some spices that can help stimulate these enzyme reaction. We're talking about ginger and curcumin. I know I love to put that in my morning shake, protein shake. Also, coriander can be helpful as well. Capsaicin and fennel as well. So these are all spices that can help those enzymes being secreted more efficiently. So how do we test for issues with digestive enzyme produced by the pancreas? Well, there are some blood tests that we can do or can be ordered, and one of the enzyme is a pancreatic enzyme, and elastase, and when it's insufficient or sufficient, it will let us know that we have some issues. There are also another one called chymotryptin, not quite sure how to pronounce that without the French accent, but that's another one that's related with the pancreas. So we want to make sure we have those measured properly. Digestive enzymes. I think more and more people now are familiar with digestive enzyme. Most of them will have a multitude of different things in it to help break down the carbs, the protein, and the fat. It also can come, and oftentimes with ox bile. There's also a vegetarian option for people that want that. And again, this is a great way to test. So if you did the HCl test, or if you kind of said that that was not the issue, and you have the symptom of being bloated 2 or 4 hours after, and the other symptom that we talked about, try this. I always say people keep them close to you, leave them in your purse for the ladies, and every time you eat, take the digestive enzyme and notice the changes and notice how you feel. It's not an expensive way to make sure that you're digesting properly. Now let's talk about bile salt. So we're switching here to what's produced by the liver, and they are concentrated in the gallbladder. And oftentimes, unfortunately, when people get their gallbladder removed, they should be told to use digestive enzyme to help in the breakdown of their food, but somehow a lot of people don't. So if any of you watching this have had their gallbladder removed, make sure that you get on the digestive enzymes as soon as possible. The bile also increase the absorption of fat, so they're important for the absorption of the fat-soluble vitamin, the vitamin A, D, E, and K. So bile salts, we're secreting just about 700 milliliter daily, and again, very important in the digestion. So that's why having your gallbladder is important, because it is basically where we're storing things. Not going to go into detail in that slide, but do know that the primary bile salts are synthesized by the liver, and the secondary ones are due to bacterial action on the colon. So we're heading to the bacteria. So bile salt insufficiency, incomplete digestion and absorption of fat, steria, and diarrhea. Diarrhea is a big one, and I see that often when people get their gallbladder removed. For months after, they often have diarrhea. Cause of decreased bile salt, well, it could be, unfortunately, stone. So we want to make sure that our digestion is efficient from the top, so we don't form stone. Impaired synthesis in the liver, another reason why it's important to not have too many toxin or alcohol to burden the liver so it can do what it's supposed to do. Gallbladder disease, CCK deficiency, which is one of the hormone related with digestion and appetite, bacterial overgrowth, medication as well can do that. So how to increase bile production naturally? So food, radishes are great, dandelion, chicory, and other bitter greens, and artichoke. Supplement, there are bile salt supplements that you can take, taurine, and also limonene, which is a colorless liquid, kind of like a lemon like oil that you take. So these are the natural way for the bile production. So how do we test if we have bile salt tissue? Again, lab tests, the stool sample can tell us about the primary, but also the secondary bile acid. And again, not to go too much in detail. So if you do have issues, I'm going to, give you tips to try to resolve things on your own, but do know that there are some tests that you can demand or ask to sort of, narrow it down to make sure that you find why you're not feeling great. So now if we go to the absorption and the digestion and the absorption in the intestine, again, we're going back to the 3 enzymes. And as you can see, some of them are produced by the stomach, some of them are produced by the pancreas. But bottom line, what we want to do is we want to break down the proteins, break down the carbs, and break down the fat. And we need all of that. So to recap, starts from the top. So the pH, the acidity is important, the pancreatic enzyme, the bile acid, and in the small intestine, we want to make sure also that the proper enzymes are secreted. And also, I'm gonna skip this slide here, but because it can lead to nutritional deficiencies. So we're looking oftentimes at iron, folate, and B12. So again, if you go for your regular blood test and you're being told you're low on certain things, especially the last 3, the iron, the folate, and the B12, and yet you're taking supplements, but it's not doing the trick, well, really look at your gut at that point. So how do we test? There is a test for malabsorption for the bowel. Basically, it's a urine test, and you ingest a D-xylose liquid, and then you're being tested before and after, and that will tell you if you have malabsorption. Because we got to think that in the gut, everything is absorbed there. So with the effect of bacteria, it's going to create 3 components, which are acetate, butyrate, and propionate. And those can also be measured and see if they're in correct proportion or not. So I know it's a little bit detailed, but I just really wanted you to see and to realize that there's a lot of tests that can be done. And sometimes, unfortunately, these tests are not done, but they do exist, and I think they're very important. So the second component is the intestinal permeability. And I love this slide here. I don't know if any of you have heard the term here of leaky gut, and I just couldn't resist that cartoon that I found online. But what the heck is leaky gut? Well, basically, it's the membrane or the junction between our cells that are too spread out, as you can see, and then undigested food fragment, in this case gluten, is going to get through. So intestinal permeability, the trigger, poor dietary choices and nutrient deficiency, stress, infection, dysbiosis, medication, systemic disease, lower stomach acid. And it can result in food allergies and sensitivity, which we're going to talk about. Poor absorption, immune activation. Either you're going to mount an immune response and your body's going to react against something that it shouldn't react, or it's going to create some inflammation and toxic overload. So again, not to go in detail, but I think by now you get the gist that sometimes the membrane, the intestinal barrier, can literally leak and food will get through, undigested food. And if you're not careful, your body is going to go into an immune reaction, thinking it's a foreign thing, and mount a reaction and create inflammation and so forth. So we really want to avoid that. Dysbiosis is imbalances between the bad bacteria, if you want to call them that, and the good bacteria, the bacteria that are in balance and we're symbiotic with. And when you have that imbalance, this is when inflammation of the bowel will happen, and oftentimes obesity can arise, and immune issues as well. So the effect of the environment, and it goes as far back as birth. It is now a known fact that having a C-section versus delivering a child through the vagina will make a huge difference on the normal of the flora of the child, because as the child goes through the canal, the mother's flora will be brought with the child. The environment, breastfeeding is not there as well, but it's all important. The diet composition, non-digestive carbs, prebiotic, which we'll talk in a bit, probiotics, and also, which I see so often, is people that have been on several courses of antibiotics throughout their life. It just kills the invader, the bacteria or the microbe or whichever it might be, but it also really creates dysbiosis with it, between the bacteria that we should have. So oftentimes, if we trace back and ask people, have you had issues in the past and health issues, and oftentimes when it comes to the digestion, people will have been on several courses of antibiotics. The next one here won't go into much detail, but we can see that there's different types of bacteria, as you most likely know, but they do change as we age. And I'm not sure if any of you have heard of the book, my goodness, it's Dr. David Plemeter, and he talks about bacteria actually that will lead to obesity versus that are more prevalent in people that are thinner. So we're talking about the Firmicutes and the Bacteroidetes, and obese people seem to have less of the bacteria. My God, I'm sorry, guys, I can't pronounce that properly. Bacteroidetes compared to the Firmicutes. So again, it's something that will affect your metabolic rate. So we want to make sure that we've got the good bacteria. So I think by now you understand the function of the microflora, and that as much as we'd like to think that we're in charge, we need these guys to do what they're supposed to do. So I talked a little bit earlier about prebiotics, and there's more conversation on prebiotics. And what are prebiotics? Well, they need to meet three criteria. They must be non-digestible by the host. They must be fermented in the GI tract by endogenous anaerobic bacteria, and they must be selective in the stimulation of the intestinal flora. So basically what these are their food that are feeding the good bacteria that we need. So you can see that they're awesome foods that we eat often, and this is one of the reasons we need to eat them. Probiotics, again, not going to go into much detail. It gets a little bit complicated. There's many types. But if you are, and I think everybody should take probiotic daily, let's make sure that there are, 6 to 10 different strains of bacteria, the lactobacillus category and the bifidobacterium categories as well. And for people that have also issues with their gut, the Saccharomyces boulardii is actually also efficient. So that's for the gut. Now the appendix, I'm not going to talk about it too much, but the appendix is basically the safe house where bacteria can be stored, and when something happens and we need to release those bacteria to re-inoculate the colon with the good bacteria, that's what it's for. So again, I truly believe that we were born with all the organs that we needed to function properly. And when we're a little bit too fast at removing the appendix, it does have a purpose. And also they're finding that in the developing countries, because of industrialization and how clean we are, we find that there's a higher rate of appendix being removed. I could not talk about probiotic without talking about yogurt. Unfortunately, yogurt is not the best source of probiotic. Fermented foods are definitely the best. So we're talking about kombucha, apple cider vinegar, pickled vegetables, sauerkraut, kimchi as well. And what the big thing is with yogurt is, unfortunately, it's full of sugar. So the sugar will feed the bad bacteria. So you're being counterproductive on eating yogurt to feed your good bacteria. Number two, whole milk versus low-fat milk or skim milk. The issue is that, first of all, it'd be best is the cows were grass-fed and not grain-fed, because what happened is the low-fat do not produce as much CLA or other omega-3s, which are good for us. So that's kind of the problem number two. And number three, it's the pasteurization of either the milk or the yogurt, which is, most of the time the yogurt is made with pasteurized milk instead of, if we could, raw milk. Then it's done at a lower temperature, and we're not killing the enzymes that we need to digest this properly. So sorry to bust the bubble of people that think yogurt is the best thing. It's not necessarily the best thing if you're taking it for your gut. This great website here, it's called the Cornucopia Institute, and they have a yogurt buyer's guide. So you can go on their website, just Google that, and it will rate, first of all, organic versus artificial sugar and all of that good stuff. Some of those are US, so I don't know if anybody from the US is listening, but some of those are also sold in Canada. So great resource. Vitamin D, also very important for the gut and the mucosal barrier. And depending where you live, you're going to be most likely deficient, especially in the winter. So it's important to get tested, and we do not want our levels just to be in the mild to moderate deficiency. We want them to be in the optimal range, which is anywhere from 80 to 200. So this person's result is at 138, which is good. I think when people ask me how much vitamin D should I take, you can't really answer that question unless you get tested. And the best time to get tested is at the end of the winter, so when you're supposedly depleted. So if you're only taking one international unit and you're in mild to moderate deficiency, it's not going to be enough to replenish your storage. So very important. The other very important thing here is omega-3s that are good for the gut. And, again, the dosage can be different, but it is suggested that anyone over 125 pounds should take 3,000 milligrams of omega-3. We are very deficient in omega-3. We're high in 6 and 9 with our North American diet, but very deficient in the omega-3. The next one is the glutamine, which can be really, really good to heal the gut. It's one of the first things that I put people on when they have irritable bowel. It's a white powder. It doesn't taste anything. You can put it in your morning shake. So to heal the gut, essential fatty acid, the omega-3, like we talked about, glutamine, probiotic, zinc, and magnesium are also very important. Then if we talk about inflammation, again, we're talking about inflammation of the gut itself. There's a lot of studies that have been done with curcumin, resveratrol, EGCG, which is the green tea extract, and quercetin as well. So very good research on this to help reduce inflammation. Other natural anti-inflammatory, I'm not going to go through the entire list. And if anybody wants more information or specifically, you can always contact me, because I'm looking at the time and I'm nowhere near done and I don't want to take your entire evening. on this, but these are the things that, are very efficient. Basic anti-inflammatory protocol, the Elimination Diet, which we'll talk about shortly, and the other supplement that I talked as well. Then we move on to the nervous system, and I'll go over this quickly because it's pretty simple concept that the nervous system controls every cell, tissue, and organ in the body. And I don't know if you knew that, but we have a specific nervous system for the gut. It's called the enteric nervous system. So when you say to someone, follow your gut feeling, or I had a bad gut feeling about it, well, it's literally true that there's a direct connection from our brain to our gut. So it's pretty complex, and it will help with the motility to make sure that we're digesting our food and so forth. So that's why it's very important, because it does receive its information from the parasympathetic system and the sympathetic system. So sympathetic nervous system is our fight and flight. We see the guy being run after by a snake. Unfortunately, too many of us are in that constant state of fight and flight. And the parasympathetic system is more of the rest and digest. So we need to be in constant balance with that. So the nervous system being very important. Here I have a slide on heart rate variability, a great tool to see if you're more on the sympathetic side or the parasympathetic side, and how your lifestyle stressors are affecting your health. There's great app out there for heart rate variability training. There's things like Heart Math that will help you bring your stress down. So it's very cool stuff. And of course, it goes back to being delivered through the vagal nerve when it comes to the enteric system. It's very important, but also your entire spine. So what are the strategies to balance your autonomic nervous system? First one, get adjusted. Yes, I'm a chiropractor, and yes, I cannot tell you how often I see improvement with digestion with proper nervous flow to the entire body, so the body can do what it's supposed to do. Get enough sleep. Again, it seems, the busyness and the craziness of go, and people neglect their sleep. It's crucial. Exercise, but don't over exercise, especially if people have adrenal fatigue. So that's the stage 2 and stage 3. And you can reference back to my hormone talk on this. Meditation, breathing, eating the proper food, and finding whatever way it is to decompress. And there are some natural supplements as well. So bottom line, when it comes to the gut, we want to remove what's causing the problem. We want to replace what's lacking. So is it digestive enzyme? Is it HCl betaine? Then we need to repopulate. So bring back the normal flora. Then we need to repair, and that's what we talked about with the gut and the glutamine, and make sure that we're removing the irritant. And then we need to rebalance, and that's the nervous system with rest and relaxation. So as you can see, it's multifactorial, and they all work together. Love this cartoon here. Allergy Cafe, all you can tolerate for $5. So now let's talk about food allergies and sensitivity. Well, first of all, what are the definitions? And these definitions are from the Functional Institute the Institute of Functional Medicine, I'm sorry. So the first one, food allergies. So this one is literally an immune reaction with the IgE mediated. So this is when somebody is, let's say, allergic to nuts, and they go into a severe reaction. That's a food allergy. Food sensitivity, on the other hand, is a reaction, but with the IgA or the IgG mediated. So it's delayed, and the symptoms, will be the bloating and all of that stuff that we talk about. And then food intolerance, this one is non-immunologic reaction to food. For example, lactose, MSG. So as you can see, these are the different definition, and the food sensitivity is what we're going to talk about. So we can't talk about that without talking about gluten-related disorder. And I mean, I could do a whole presentation on all this, but I'm going to try to give you the gist of things here. So there is such a thing as non-celiac gluten sensitivity, because celiac disease, if people don't know, it's an autoimmune disease that people are allergic to gluten, and they will react to it, and it can be quite dangerous and really not pleasant when people have that if they don't do what they're supposed to do. So what are the possible reasons why gluten-related disorder are on the rise? Hybridized wheat, definitely a big component. Increase in our consumption of wheat. Also, all the uses of pesticide and chemicals such as glyphosate. The gut microbiome is out of balance, so our body then will react in an amplified way with the foods that we're eating. And then increasing of the environmental toxic load in our overall system. So how do we test? For celiac disease, basically people have the genes HLA-DQ2 and DQ8. So this can be tested extensively, but also it's not just those two genes. Here's a copy of a lab report by a US company that will test more extensively all of the components that are important to diagnose if somebody has a sensitivity or is has celiac disease. The other report here that I have is a IgG food sensitivity test, which we can do at the clinic and can be done, in many places. And what's great about this is that it tells you the food that your body is reacting to. So you can then do an elimination diet specifically with those foods. So for this sample report, this person has 10 foods that they're high in that they completely should avoid. Then they have some that are borderline, and then more greens, which is good for this person. Sometimes it's pretty sad when we get test results and some people have 20, 30 foods that they can't eat. So it's the integrity of the mucosal barrier. It's the integrity of, the efficiency of everything in the body that led to this status. So when it comes to the non-celiac gluten sensitivity, what are the symptoms? I think everybody knows by now: diarrhea, abdominal pain. Some people will lose weight and they don't really know why. A lot of gas. Extraintestinal symptoms, very important to know here. Bone and joint pain. I had the pleasure of having Dr. William Davis, the author of the book Weak Belly, a few years ago at our Ottawa Health and Wellness Expo. And as some of you may know, Dr. Davis is a cardiologist, and he was taking people off the gluten and seeing results in all sorts of different things, bone and joint pain being a big one, and obviously an improvement in their cardiovascular function. So it's not just digestive symptoms when it comes to gluten sensitivity. Now, sometimes people will say, well, no one can really digest gluten. And in some ways, it is true that we don't really have the enzymes to break down gluten properly. But if the intestinal barrier is healthy, that's why some people will be able to eat some gluten, or at least once in a while, and won't have a lot of issues, is because their intestinal barrier, they don't have a leaky gut, and the food is not going through, where it's not supposed to, and mounting a reaction. So authorities in the field, Dr. Alessio Fasano is an expert when it comes to gluten, and he basically created a lot of awareness about it. But he also says that it's like anything else. For instance, a bacteria going into your body should be able to deal with it appropriately. So in a certain way, we should be able to eat gluten in small amount, and if our gut is healthy. But what's happening is most people have irritation and malfunction in their, absorption and digestion and so forth. So it's often the case that people are going to become sensitive to it. Celiac disease, again, I'm not going to go into much detail, but it's not pretty, and it can lead to a lot of issues. The other important one that we see often is irritable bowel disease, which, again, genes, environment, immune response, and the quality of the microbes we have and the gut and the integrity of it. Irritable bowel disease can definitely, have and cause some issues. Solid evidence, elemental diet, modulant, prebiotic, probiotic, turmeric can make a huge difference as well. Boswellia, fish oil. And there are some also single studies that have been done on supplements that will help with irritable bowel disease, like lycopene, aloe vera, ginger, wheatgrass juice, silymarin, UCNS, and CDNS as well. So as you can see, there's quite a bit that have been done in terms of research for that. So key point for irritable bowel syndrome, again, polyphenols, so eat the color of the rainbow, fish oil, probiotic, vitamin D to downregulate the inflammation, short-chain fatty acid as well. Also, whey protein is very efficient as well into healing the gut. And again, glutamine would be efficient as well. The last thing that I want to talk about is called Sibo, and I mentioned it earlier. So how do we know if we have Sibo? And first of all, what is Sibo? So Sibo is small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, which refers to an abnormally large number of bacteria in the small intestine. That really should be more in the large part, the large intestine. So oftentimes, these are the people that have done the elimination diet, which we'll talk about in a moment, and they're still not feeling the right way. So Sibo is often the culprit when people have irritable bowel syndrome and are not, getting the results by the elimination. So we put people with Sibo on what is called a FODMAP diet. The FODMAP is the acronym for fermentable, oligosaccharide, disaccharide, monosaccharide, and polyphenol. So what we do, and I'm going to shift, actually go back to it in a second. But what we do is we put people on a diet with the foods that are not going to feed those bacteria in the small intestine. Sibo is often overlooked. Like I said, 78% of patients tested positive that had irritable bowel syndrome. So if any of you have been told, oh, nothing you can do, you've got, what did I have a patient say to you? Nervous stomach. There's, yes, the nervous system will have an impact, but if you're, having issues and being diagnosed with irritable bowel syndrome, do try the FODMAP diet. A lot of people that have chronic fatigue or fibromyalgia will really do well on that as well. So how do we test? There is a breath test. I mean, you can do the diet and see how you feel. That's the cheap and easiest way to go about it. But there's also a breathing test where basically it's measuring the gas that you're breathing out and the fermentation. So it's a test that can be done. So causes and consequences of Sibo, again, go back to the HCl. So not enough acid in the stomach, malnutrition, immune deficiency, and the consequences, are going to be you not being able to break down food or tolerate food, vitamin and mineral deficiency, fat malabsorption, and food allergies, and creating inflammation in the body, which we don't want. So the FODMAP diet basically has 4 phases. The elimination phase, so for a minimum of 8 weeks, you remove all the high FODMAP food from the diet, which I'll show you in a second. You reintroduce them after, depending on who you read, 5 weeks, and you monitor closely, and you reintroduce one food at a time, so you know how you're doing. And then continue the low-fat, low FODMAP diet with addition of the tolerated food. And then maintenance will depend on, what your body can be more efficient with. So these are the food that are suitable on a low FODMAP diet. This can be searched online. If you just Google FODMAP diet, you'll see tons of information on there. Food that you should avoid, and I'll just look, let's say, at fruits. Apple. There's nothing wrong with an apple, but it's just that apple will feed the bacteria that are giving you issues that are in your small intestine that should not be there. So that's basically the gist of things. There's great apps out there. Actually, that's a screenshot from the app that I have on my phone. So when you go shopping, you're like, should I have that? Should I pass on that? So if it's green, you're good to go. If it's red, don't do it. And I think they have yellow, which is the in-between. So again, nothing wrong with blackberry, but if you're having, Sibo, you should not eat them, but you can eat blueberry. The FODMAP diet can be customized for vegan or people that are paleo, dairy-free, or lacto-vegetarian, so you can adapt to it. All you can eat buffet. So what I'd like to finish with, because I know I give you a whole bunch of stuff, and that's always my issue. I have way more content and not enough time. But if you see this, and you have issues with your gut, consider getting the food sensitivity test. If it's not in your budget, then just do the elimination diet, which this is the gift that I'm going to give you tonight, is full access to the elimination diet with the IFM, which I'm the Institute of Functional Medicine, which I'm part of. So just follow that, and you're going to see results. And it is for 28 days. You have food that you need to remove, foods that you can eat. It is a little bit challenging because there's going to be some stuff you're not going to be able to eat, but people feel really good on it. This is not a diet to necessarily lose weight. It's a diet to eliminate the things that your body are reacting to, and the toxins that you have in your body as well, because you're obviously going to eat cleaner. Then there are the advanced therapeutic intervention, like we talked about, the FODMAP diet and so forth. But do start with the basic elimination diet. And if that's not doing what it's supposed to do, then you can really dig deeper in those different ones. So for instance, sometimes people have histamine issue, and there are diets for that. Candida diet as well. So as you can see, it can get a little bit complex, but you just go back to the elimination diet. It's a great place to start. The information that I'm going to give you has got everything that you need to know. Do make sure that you prepare. You can't just start the elimination diet tomorrow and have nothing in your food pantry and your fridge, because it's just not going to work. You need to prepare. You need to set a date, and you need to go for it. So some of the sign and symptom during food challenges: some people will experience headache and craving, especially at first. Sore joints and muscle for the next, the first few days. Digestive issues, sinus congestion sometimes, because your body is sort of going through withdrawal and it's cleaning itself. Fatigue and insomnia can also be seen. So I try to be respectful of the hour, and we're coming to an end here. So hopefully you don't feel like this. And in some ways, I really hope that you don't, but in some ways, if you do, that's okay, because This is complex, but what I wanted you to realize today is that if you have issues, if you have symptoms, let's do something about it. It's your body telling you that something is not doing what it's supposed to do, and we have to go to the source of the problem and find it, because as you can see, if there's a deficiency somewhere in the body, it led to a whole bunch of diseases that we talked about. So this is my last slide with my little gift to you guys here, and I apologize if it's a little bit of a long URL here. But this is, if you type that in, you'll end up on a landing page, and you're going to enter your name and email, and then you're going to receive an email with all the information to do the elimination diet from the Institute of Functional Medicine. It's got the comprehensive plan. It also has recipes and the whole shebang, so you can do it. But like I said, make sure that you're geared and ready to go. This is not something that you do on a whim. It's 21 days or 28 days is usually what I suggest. And again, it's not easy, but well worth it to test, what you're sensitive to. And then when you reintroduce the food, as I said, do one at a time, do it for 2 days in a row. Don't go and reintroduce all the food categories. Let's say ordering a pizza when you're done with your test, because it's got cheese, it's got the gluten, it's got everything, and you won't necessarily know what's going on. So I just went over a little bit the hour. I have time for question if any of you wants to ask question. And what do I have here? Christine's asked about green yogurt. Well, I must say that I don't even know about green yogurt. So I'm going to have to look that up, Christine. Oh, you meant Greek yogurt. Well, Greek yogurt, again, it's a bit of a marketing thing, but the 3 things that I said about yogurt is the sugar added to it, is the pasteurization. And if you're going to do Greek yogurt or yogurt, go look at the Cornucopia website and go find the best yogurt that are low in sugar, that are organic, again, very important, from grass-fed cows. So if you put all of those factors into play, then you're going to have a better yogurt. But yogurt is definitely not the best tool. Fermented food is, as I mentioned, and obviously a good probiotic. So glad to see that everybody stayed on the webinar, which means that hopefully I didn't lose you all. Can any of you type in a little comment or something, so I know if you enjoy the webinar? It's in your chat. And if you have any questions, I'll give you a few seconds to voice your question. I'd be happy to help you out. Merci, Ginette. And again, don't be shy. Most of you have access through me, either through our clinic here in Ottawa or online. I'm always accessible to answer your question. Thanks, Catherine. A lot of info, but helpful. Good. I'm glad to see that. And thanks, Nancy. All right, so I'll sign off on this. And you will also get the replay link to this, so you can review if there were some slides that you wanted to grab the information. You'll have access to that. And thank you for taking the time to spend time on your own health and finding some solution, because a lot of people are doing other things, but you are here taking the time to make your health better. So thank you again. This was Dr. Nathalie Beauchamp. And I look forward to the next webinar we're going to do in about a month. And if you want to send me suggestion on things you'd like me to talk about, I've covered hormones so far. We've done the gut. We've talked about vitamins. Always open to new things. So thanks a lot and have a great night.